I guess most Cubase users at one point use Halion Sonic, especially the SE version, since it comes free with your Cubase or Steinberg product, and it is really powerful and offers a lot of things, especially for a free plugin. I think this is one of the best features in Cubase. And therefore I want to share some insights about this plugin. I don't want to go into every detail since there are a lot of videos about it already, and I don't want to start with the simplest basics. What I want to do is I want to share some ideas that are not that common but also not too complicated, and hopefully will show you some ideas that you didn't know already and with which you can improve your working with Halion. So at first, and one of the, I have to admit, basic things, but in my view also one of the most important things is, if you want to open the plugin, then you have to go to the little piano button that will show you Halion. And the information I want to share with you is that you can find this button at various places, and sometimes it is a little hidden. So I want to share it real quick. You can find it obviously here, but also in your inspector over here, and that goes also for the MIDI tracks that you have routed to Halion. So if you click on a MIDI track, you will also find this symbol here, and if you click it, it will open the plugin for you. Also, what happens a lot is, if you're working on a track right now and you have assigned it to Halion, and then you will probably be in the key editor, and from there you can also open the plugin if you use the open the plugin button right here in the top. And another way to open the plugin, which is really practical because you will use it a lot, is you can open it here from your mixer view, and that is helpful as well because in the mixing process we will probably go back to the plugin and tweak some buttons there as well. So what you can do is you can click and hold the edit button, or you could simply alt click it and both will open the plugin for you. Another option is over here. So if you have clicked on a MIDI track, then it will also show the plugin where the MIDI track is routed to, and you can click the button here. And of course, what you could also do, if you have your channel view open here, then you could of course also use the edit button to open the plugin from there. So that is, I think, a really good idea, because you don't want to always close the mixer or the key editor or whatever just to open the plugin again. You should be able to open it from wherever you are working right now, so that you can save time. If you have opened it, I think the basic functions are probably well known to everyone who has used it, but there are some ideas in this plugin that are not that popular and probably look a little confusing or boring and therefore are not used that often. For example, what you have here is a own undo and redo button for your plugin. And I think that is really cool, because you cannot do those things with your standard command. So Command and Z is not resetting all the functions inside this plugin, but this button does. So you see, I just changed the volume, for example, or the panorama, and if I want to undo that, I can do so or redo that with this button up here. Also, the two buttons right next to it are really cool. Sometimes what happens is that plugins, especially if you play it with an instrument that is hooked to your laptop, they kind of freak out and then play one note over and over again, and you can't stop it from playing. And therefore you have this button here that looks like a lightning bolt, and it is the MIDI reset button. And if something happens to your setup, which sometimes just happens, you can just click on this button and it will put the plugin into this MIDI reset mode, and the note will stop ringing. And the next button is also quite helpful. It switches between the edit and the player mode. So in this player mode, you have a lot more things that you can do, but it is also quite big. And I found that sometimes, at least in the view that I use, it will be too big. So if I load, for example, this instrument or this plugin, and I go into the edit page, then with my keyboard it won't fit on the page anymore. And since most of the time, not always, but most of the time, if I want to tweak my instrument, I don't need the quick controls, and I also don't need the piano, and I don't need to see all my other instruments. The edit window is enough for me, and it fits better in my window and shows me exactly what I need and not anything more. So what I can advise you to do is to hook up a hardware controller to your laptop and to use the quick controls of Halion. That is really simple. If you have connected your hardware controller and you set it up correctly, then you see you can, with your hardware controller, simply tweak all the buttons that are down here in your quick control slots. And these are 8, and you can really easy use them here in your arranger window as well, because you have the quick controls up here in your inspector. That is also very easy to do. You just select your MIDI track and go to quick controls, and then you can set it up any way you want to. Right now I will just use the quick controls that are connected to this instrument in the first place, and therefore I use the button that loads the standard quick controls. And right now I can, if I click on this track, super easy adjust my instrument without having to open the player itself. So of course I could go here to my instrument and then tweak the button, but I could also use my hardware controller, or if I want, so I could also of course use the mouse here for my quick controls, and I load the most used of the quick controls that I want to have here in these slots. And you can see if I move the slider, the knob over here moves as well. This is really very helpful to know, and like I said, I would advise you to do so. If you want to know what the quick controls are and how they work and how you set it up, I made a video about it, and I will leave a link in the description. You can just watch it right there. Another trick for the Halion player that is really simple to use and comes in super handy is the pads. You have 8 chord pads here that you can use super easy and the way you like to. For example, what you could do is you right click it and you say snapshot chord, and then you can do one of two things. You could either with your mouse just click the notes, or you could say snapshot chord, and if you have a piano hooked up to your computer, then you would just press the keys and you have the two chords right here. You could now, if you want to, name the pads, and what is even more helpful, you could set up trigger notes for these. So what I mean is you right click it again and then you either go here to assign trigger node and select it for yourself, or you go to learn trigger node, click that and press one key of your keyboard, and then you see it becomes a slightly different color. And right now, if I play one of these notes, I can simply with one finger play the whole chord. If you want to, you can simply produce effects here in your instrument as well. So you just go to effects and you select a slot and just use any of these. You tweak the buttons to your liking, and then you go back to the mix page, and if you want to, you could just use the effect slider and send some of your sound to that effect. Some of these effects are quite good, and it is a very practical idea to do everything here in this plugin if it is not required to be very high-end, or if you want these effects always available in your mixer, because that won't be possible. So if you go to your mixing stage and then you wanna change the send effects, you won't find them here. Then again, you have to open your plugin and go to effects and then add it and change it here. That might be not that good of an idea, so some people don't use it, but I think for simple effect ideas, this is quite a good idea. And then if you do so, there is another button that helps a lot, and that is the one here, because if you used the effects and you want to listen to the plugin without, then you can bypass all the effects with this button, or switch it back on again. So one page that not a lot of people use, I guess, is the Midi page. It looks really boring, and I know a lot of people just don't need these functions, but I want to share some of these real quick with you because I think this is a very underrated page and you can do quite some very cool things here. You will see in a moment. For example, what I have done is I loaded up some instruments, and right now on this track I have my piano, and on this I have a tuba sound, and here again I have some strings mixed with a pad, and I have a choir and different stuff. So right now it goes like this. If I select that track, then I can hear my tuba, and if I select that, I can hear my strings, and that might be the perfect solution. But one thing that might be very cool is you can layer different sounds if you just put these into the same MIDI channel. So what I mean is, right now I set up my piano, the strings and the choir all to MIDI channel 1. And if I go to my MIDI channel 1, you can now see and hear that on one track I can play 3 of these sounds, or if I like, up to 16 at the same time. And it is super easy. You just select the MIDI channel that you want, you select the instruments that you like, and that's it. If you select this track now, it will always play the piano, the strings and the choir at the same time. With that, you can stack some really cool sounds, plus, and that is, I think, the best thing about it, you can edit these in one go. Because otherwise you would have to record the choir here and the piano here and the strings here and then my synth here. So now I have recorded all my tracks, but if I want to change something, I have to open that and change it here, and then I close it and open that and change it here, and that is not efficient at all. Right now it's super easy. If I want to record something here, you see, I have now the notes here, and if I click it, you can hear the result is all the 3 instruments are triggered at the same time, and I can easily edit it, and that will edit all the 3 sounds at the same time. So now what happens is I wanna make changes, and that is not so easy. Here in my mixer, I'm at the mixing process, but unfortunately, you see all the sounds are now coming through the same track. And if I apply changes to this track, for example, use a compressor, then it will compress all the 3 instruments with the same settings, which is probably not a good idea. So what you can do now, you open your instrument, you go to the mix page and send simply these 3 instruments to different outputs. So what would happen? You see this? Slot 2, slot 3, slot 4. Cubase automatically put in 3 more channels, and now you can see that I have a piano, I have a strings, and I have a choir sound. And they are all on separate channels now. So if I want to compress my piano, I go to this channel, I use the compressor here. And if I want to apply changes to any of the other sounds, I can do so right now here up in my mixer. And it is super easy. All the 3 instruments are played at the same time, but can be edited on different channels. I think that is super cool. Another thing you can do here in the MIDI tab is you can restrain the polyphony. So if you want, for example, one instrument to only play melodies and no chords, even if you press more than one key, you can do so if you set the polyphony to 1. That means if I play more than one key at the same time, you can still only hear one of the notes. That would be practical if you want to play a melody instrument and you don't want any of the notes to ring at the same time. You just would activate this function here, or you restrain it to 2 notes, then you can only play diads or triads, and that is super easy to do so here. Right now, if I record something here with my piano sound, you see, even if I do not let go of the keys, it recorded 4 notes, but you can only hear one at a time. The next thing would also be really interesting for some players like me that are not really piano players. You can, of course, play probably better in the key of C than in the key of D flat. And therefore you have a simple transpose function, so everything you play in D flat, you can just play with the white keys and then you would transpose it a half step up or down, whatever you want to. That would be also interesting for your stacking sounds function, because, for example, what you could do is you could set it up so you can play a root, then a fifth, and then a root note an octave higher with one key. Interesting is also the next possibility that you have. So you can see a keyboard over here, and that has 3 more functions. Well, let's say 2, and then the view changes quite drastically, but you see you have 3 more tabs over here, and they are also very helpful and easy to use. So what you could do is you could say, for example, I want to play the tuba and the piano at the same time, but I also do not want them to play in the same range. And therefore you could just restrain the range to certain keys. So if you grab this gray slider and pull it somewhere, you see the notes here at the side, they change. You can also type it in here, or like I do right now, you just use your mouse wheel, and the gray keys mean you cannot play them anymore. Well, you could play it, but you won't be able to hear anything. You see down here the keys also changed to another color, and that means I can play it, but I can only hear the tuba, because down here I have my piano grayed out, and that means you cannot hear it down here, but up here you can hear my piano, but not the tuba. And that gives you the option to play 2 instruments at the same time, but one only in that range and the other just in another range. You could also, of course, start restraining the stacked sounds that you created to certain areas, and then you would be able to play the tuba here, the piano here, 2 of the same here, and the piano only here, and so on. And it's really not much work and very easy to understand. The next tab is quite similar but changes from your key number to velocity. If you want to, you could restrain the velocity of the instruments that you play. That means, for example, that you can hear certain sounds only if you hit the keys that hard or that soft. Right now I can hear my piano only if I play soft, and if I hit the keys hard, the piano will not be heard anymore, but the tuba will be heard and it won't be heard when I play the keys soft. Also interesting for some players are probably the controller filters that you have on the third tab. You can here click on certain controllers and stop them from being recorded. So right now you can see, and here down here on the left, if I use my pitch bend or modulation wheel, then you can see it moves here and it will also be recorded. So if I start my recording and I use the pitch bend, you can already see it. It was written while it was recorded. If you wanna stop your instrument from playing back these functions here, so for example your sustain pedal or the pitch bend or the modulation wheel or aftertouch or whatever, some of these you can choose here, then you just click that button and that makes your instrument, or the plugin, skip that function. So right now you could hear the pitch bend wasn't working anymore. If I untick that box, the pitch bend is audible again, and if I click it, you can still see that the pitch bend wheel moves, but you cannot hear anything. So that might be interesting for comparing reasons, or if you then realize you don't need that function anymore and you just want to switch it off real quick. So I hope these ideas gave you a new insight into Halion and the possibilities you have here. There's of course a buttload more to that, but I think for that video that was enough. And if you like this, check out some of the other videos or leave a comment and tell the other users what you found out about Halion and share your ideas here.